calm down. What's gotten into you? Talk with me. Whatever it is, we can work it out, he pleaded. Work it out? Work this out, I screamed, before throwing the antique vase his mother gave us as a wedding present. He ducked my throw, watching it dissolve into a million chips of porcelain as it vaporized against the wall. That was childish. Grow up. What's this about? Please talk with me. He almost sounded convincing. I have nothing to say to you except go fuck yourself, you lying, cheating sack of shit. What are you talking about? He grabbed my arm, trying to pull me toward him. I ran towards the front door, grabbing the first set of keys on the entry table. I couldn't move very fast in my flip-flop slippers, but I managed to slam the door hard enough so it sounded like a sonic boom rattling the windows. Oh, I exclaimed, as I saw the keys I grabbed were David's, and they wouldn't fit my Lexus. I saw him approaching in pursuit, so I jumped in his Jeep Wrangler and quickly turned the key in the ignition. The car leapt forward because it was in gear. I thought to myself. By that time, Dave was at the driver's door, trying to pry it open. Karen, where the hell are you going in the middle of the night? Whatever it is, we can work it out. Talk to me, he shouted. I remembered his driving instructions and depressed the clutch. The engine started. After I ground it into gear, I pushed the accelerator and dropped the clutch. This time the Jeep shot forward with screeching tires, almost going sideways. It ran over Dave's lighted lawn gnome before I got it under control. He continued screaming something as I drove away. I had no clue where to go. If I went to my mother's house, she would just berate me. She's always hated David and said he wasn't in my class. I probably shouldn't have married him after knowing him for such a short time, but I fell in love with his sexy good looks and smooth talk. Today was the day I had hoped to tell him I was pregnant, but life never seems to work out for me the way I planned. To make things worse, he was cheating with Debbie, my sister. My God, she had 2 kids and an adoring husband. This betrayal has so my levels I couldn't count them. Barely able to see through my tears, I drove aimlessly around the city. I hadn't realized there were areas like this in our city, with seedy-looking bars and the homeless sleeping in cardboard box makeshifts. This seemed like a different planet. The stench of the ghetto flowed through the vents. All I could think of was him with Debbie. I had noticed she has been overtly friendly with Dave lately. I remember her whispering with him at Mason's house party last week, and how infuriating it was when she flashed me her glowing smile. I recognized that smile, the one she has when she's keeping a secret. Was I foolish to believe my husband wasn't susceptible to other women? Why didn't I get suspicious when suddenly he had to work late, or his numerous private conversations with my sister? I just believed in him. I believed in us. Now I'm nothing but a fool. Suddenly I was aware that I was driving in an old industrial area, because there were few cars on the street, and the windows were dark. The only lights I saw were from fires burning in trash cans in an adjacent abandoned parking lot, and a flashing neon sign at the end of the block. Just when I was thinking things couldn't get any worse, my engine jerked, sputtered and quit. I had no clue where the hell I was as the Jeep came to an abrupt stop. Looking at the instruments, I was out of gas. I had been too preoccupied in my misery to even notice the blinking fuel light. I cranked the engine but it wouldn't turn over. That was just the beginning of my problems. My first reaction was to call my mom. I looked at the empty passenger's seat, and an icy chill ran through me. After realizing I didn't bring my purse, I took a deep breath and evaluated my situation. I'm a professional counselor and believe no matter what the situation, there is always a solution. Okay, here I am out of gas, in a seedy part of town. I have no identification, money, or phone, and the temperature outside is dropping rapidly. My options seemed limited. First, I put on the emergency flashers, hoping to attract the attention of a police patrol car, or possibly a good Samaritan. Next, I looked in the mirror and started pulling the rollers out of my hair. Alright, that might seem a bit vain, but I'll be damned if I'll look like a hag when I'm rescued. Then I looked for some spare change in the ashtray and glove compartment. Nothing. I thought, what kind of person cleans his car that carefully, but is so careless as to not to erase his text messages? Bastard. Those text messages were all the damning evidence I needed. I remember how I caught them. I had heard a beep from an incoming text. We have the same brand of phones, so I picked it up. Quickly, I realized it was not my phone, but before I set it down, I noticed the text was from my sister. I was confused. Why would Debbie text David? I opened the phone record. My heart dropped. There it was in front of me. I thought this couldn't be real, but after reading the conversation over, I realized they were having an affair. I sat for an hour thinking about my cheating husband while shivering, and waiting for my rescuer that never came. Option 2 was to go seek help. The only sign of life I saw was the flashing sign at the end of the block. I cinched up my robe, and stepped out of the car. A cold wind hit my exposed face, and it felt like 1,000 icicles. I thought, Why couldn't he at least cheat on me, in the summer? As I approached the flashing sign, I saw that it read, Ricky's Bar and Grill. There were several motorcycles parked at the entrance of the old building. I could hear the music blaring as I pulled open the door. The springs were so strong that the door slammed as I stepped inside. Conversation stopped and all attention was directed at me. I need help, I announced. You need desperate help with your wardrobe, honey, said one of the bar girls. Everyone laughed. Not knowing what to say or do, I cried. That always seemed to work. A big guy with tattoos on his arms and a full beard approached me as I wept. This guy had to be the biggest, most intimidating man I had ever seen. He gently put his hand on my shoulder and led me to a booth. I tightened my robe and crossed my arms in front of me, trying to modestly cover myself from the staring people. Can I get you something to drink? He asked. I can't drink alcohol because I'm pregnant. Really? How about some water or coffee then? Coffee sounds good. I was still shivering. He called out to the bartender, another bud for me, and a coffee for the lady. Then he looked me over and asked, at the risk of sounding cliched, what's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this? Like a dam burst, I poured out my situation and problems to this perfect stranger. He listened patiently while I shared the utterly hopeless story of my failing marriage. I didn't even bother to ask his name. Behind the rough appearance and grisly beard were eyes of understanding and compassion. I finally came to the end of my story, and my face was soaked with tears. He patted the top of my hand and said, that's quite a saga. By the way, my name is Rick. I'm sorry I was rude and self-absorbed. My name is Karen. Karen Holloway. I'm glad to meet you, I said, giving him a finger shake. Rick looked over at the bar and said loudly, Misty, would you come here a minute? A thin blonde girl came to the table popping gum and asked, what's up, Ricky? This is Karen. She is about your size. Do you have a change of clothes you could loan her? Sure. What are you? A size 4. Follow me to the bedroom, hun, and we'll see what we can do. Whoa. I followed her into the back of the bar where it was more spacious than I would have believed. We passed a commercial kitchen and several storage rooms. Then, at the end of the hallway there was a large apartment-sized granny flat. She handed me a cocktail dress and said, try this. I have some heels to match. Are you and Rick married? I asked, walking toward the bathroom with the clothes draped over my arm. Heavens no. Ricky ain't the marrying kind. That'd be like Kagan, an eagle. I looked at her vanity and asked, Misty, may I use a little of your makeup? Knock yourself out. What's mine is yours. After brushing out my hair and applying some basic makeup, I walked out of the bathroom. Once I'm home, I'll pay you both handsomely. Sure you will, sweet pea. You're a billionaire, right? I have the cash. I mistakenly left without my purse. Relax, hun. I'm just pulling your leg. You hungry? How about a grilled ham and cheese? That sounds lovely. I didn't want to sound snobbish, telling her I didn't eat cheese, ham or even bread. Y'all wanna use the phone to call someone? Not yet. Maybe in a few minutes. I did want to call someone, but I couldn't call my mom as I didn't want a lecture about what a loser Dave was. I couldn't call most of my friends until I found out exactly who knew about this affair. I was so hurt, and I hadn't thought any of this through. I just reacted. It's not like I would have a contingency plan in place for dealing with this. I was crushed when I discovered the truth. Why would he cheat? I wasn't conceited, but I know I am prettier than any of our friends or acquaintances. I've never refused him, even when I'm not in the mood except for that but thing. That seems so dirty. Maybe that was it. I knew Debbie was more adventurous than me. When we walked back into the bar, all eyes were on me. Then, spontaneously, the room broke out in applause and whistles. I was immediately embarrassed, but I curtsied in appreciation. Ricky walked up to me and held me at arm's length, evaluating me. Now that's what I'm talking about. I blushed. While you were changing, I sent my guys down to gas up and retrieve your car. That was kind. How can I possibly repay you? Oh, I'll think of something. He grinned. His smile was enchanting and very suggestive. Right now, I'd settle for a dance. I'm sorry, but I'm not really in a dancing mood. Then how would you like to sit a while? I have a couple things to ask you. I was grateful for his help, so I sat with him. I could tell the patrons were watching me. Ricky sat in the booth with me. There was something very disarming about him. I briefly studied him. He was a man's man with bulging biceps and a thick, muscular neck. His voice was deep and masculine, but also soft. I've never been attracted to his type, but that was beginning to change. How are you feeling now that you've had time to think it over? He asked, looking me over carefully. My shock initially made me numb, but now, that's replaced with anger. I was such a fool, thinking how much he loved and adored me. How could they have so totally fooled me? I lamented as I burst into tears. If you don't mind me saying so, your husband is an idiot. I can't imagine cheating on such a beautiful, sensitive woman as you. I flushed at the compliment. I knew under different circumstances I'd be in trouble with this guy. I think he felt the same, maybe in a different world. Do you think you should talk it over with him and your sister? The only talking I'll do is through my attorney. Dave doesn't know he's going to be a father, and I'm not going to tell him. I don't want to live with my folks, but I don't have a choice. My mom will be in a constant state of, "I told you so. You're just too sweet." Most women would have kicked his ass out and not left themselves, or they would figure out how to get revenge. If you want, I could break his legs. Ricky laughed. His legs would heal faster than my heart. I want that bastard to feel my pain. I want him to suffer my loss. I know one way to inflict maximum pain. How is that? How about I go with you and get your things? Then you tell him you're going to be staying with me. At first I thought this was an obvious ploy to get, but the idea did have some merit. He watched intently as I thought it over. If I do this, it doesn't mean I'm sleeping with you. I'm not that easy. Do I appear like a guy desperate to get laid? I don't take advantage of women in such a vulnerable state. I'm sorry. I guess I'm not feeling really good about the guys right now. What about your sister? Don't you think you should talk with her? I no longer have a sister, and at the first opportunity I'm going to tell Ronnie what a bad girl his wife is. Okay. I'll follow you to your place so you can get your things. I will make sure he doesn't stop you, then tell him you're moving in with me. As I thought about it, Elle liked the idea more and more. I said, I can't wait to see the look on his face. Of course I don't expect you to really move in, but I've got room if you want and you won't have to ask for your mom's assistance. And what do you plan to get out of this? I asked suspiciously. Like I said, we'll figure something out. He grinned, Drew. As I pulled into the driveway, Dave came immediately running toward the car with a look of panic on his face. Ricky pulled up behind me on his Harley and gunned his engine a couple times. I'm sure he woke the neighbors. Then my sister came out the door also. As I opened the door, Dave tried to hold me. I pushed the bastard away and Ricky stepped between us. I walked toward the door as Dave screamed, "Who the hell is this guy? Where have you been? Why are you dressed like that?" Ricky grabbed my husband by the neck and stopped him cold. Debbie gripped his arm and he easily pushed her away. I walked in the front door with Debbie following behind me. I could hear Dave wincing in pain. I felt like stopping it, but somehow it seemed appropriate. Pain for pain seemed a whole lot like justice. Debbie was screaming at me. "What are you doing, Karen? You're acting crazy. Don't talk to me. What the hell are you talking about? I'm no such thing. I caught you and my unfaithful husband. How long have you been cheated on me with him?" "What? Dave and me? There's no way." I looked on the mantel for Dave's phone and saw it where I had placed it. I suspected he'd have erased the messages, but when I opened his text history it was still there. "Explain this." I handed her the phone. She read the messages. "Debbie, we can't keep this deception up much longer." "Dave, yeah, I agree. Karen is bound to find out. I think she's suspicious. Can you meet with me tomorrow?" "Debbie, I can after 6. Ronnie is taking the kids to the movies." "Dave, that works for me. I'll just tell Karen I'm working late. Same place as usual." "Debbie, KK, see ya there." Debbie burst out laughing almost hysterically. That certainly wasn't the reaction I expected. Tears of laughter poured down her cheeks. After a couple deep breaths, she said, "Oh my God, I can see why you thought what you did. I love you, Karen. There is a simple explanation, and that is, Dave and I have been planning a surprise birthday party for you. He had me purchase Victoria's Secret's lingerie for you, as part of your present. We've been meeting at the mall." Dave pulled out all the stops. "We've been planning it for almost a month. There will be over 50 people." All I could do was stare at her, with my mouth hanging open. I felt horrible, actually worse than I felt when I thought they had cheated. I rushed to Debbie, throwing my arms around her and kissing her cheeks. It was like a 1,000-pound weight was lifted off me. "Oh my God. Forgive me. How could I have thought that about you? You're my sister. I'm so sorry." "Sis, you better go rescue your husband from that goon. Where did you meet that Neanderthal anyway? He is kinda cute. I'll tell you later." This was a night I won't soon forget. I was able to get to Ricky and stop him just before the police arrived. We were able to assure them there was just a misunderstanding. Dave was a bit shaken up, but no worse for the wear. After I spent 10 minutes apologizing to David, I invited Ricky in and explained the whole story. I told Dave how Ricky rescued me, and I offered to pay him for his trouble. He refused money but said he had another idea. Woo. Even though the party wasn't any longer a surprise, I was blessed by a huge crowd of well-wishers, including our found biker friends that furnished several kegs of beer. Dave quickly forgave me for suspecting him. I think we learned a lot through this. The baby is half-term now and I'm experiencing the hormones I read about. I never found out what Ricky had in mind for repayment, but I have a pretty good idea. Hey, a girl has to have her fantasies too. The end.